I've tried to tell this story 100 times, but no matter how I start, the memory strikes me like a lightning bolt. So here goes. I was 9 when my family moved to that creaky old house on Maple Avenue in rural Pennsylvania. Peeling paint, narrow hallways, a backyard that grew wild in the summer. I felt adrift until I met Tyler, who lived a few doors down. He was scrappy, with a crooked tooth and eyes that always seemed to be plotting something. One sticky June afternoon, he held out a battered pair of walkie-talkies and said, "Wanna be walkie-talkie friends?" Of course, I did. That night, I lay on my bed, the sheets bunched under me, talking to Tyler through those crackling radios. We'd hush our voices, sharing secrets, favorite snacks, stupid jokes, dreams of becoming ghost hunters or private detectives. Channel 12 became our private world. No one else mattered once we hit call. For the rest of that summer, we were inseparable. We'd bike until the sun dipped behind the hills, chase fireflies by the creek, and plan our big escape, run away together, live off the land, and solve mysteries. But our greatest adventure happened in the dark, our voices dancing through static each night, as though we were standing side by side even when houses apart. Then one night, everything changed. I remember lying on my bedroom floor, doodling half-finished comics, when the walkie-talkie crackled. I answered, expecting Tyler's usual "wanna hear a secret," but instead he whispered, trembling, "If I call tomorrow, don't answer." He sounded scared, so scared I sat up, heart hammering. "Tyler, what's wrong?" I whispered, but he clicked off before I got an answer. The next morning, my mom burst into my room. "They found Tyler," she said, voice hollow, "by the creek." I ran to the window to see police lights flashing, red and blue. My stomach dropped. They said it was an accident, he must have slipped on a rock and hit his head. But I remembered his warning. I refused to believe he just fell. I spent the next week combing the creek's edge, poking at mud, hoping for a clue. My parents said I was imagining things, that I needed to move on. But I knew something was wrong. School started again, and I tried to blend in new backpack, forced smiles at lunch, but I felt hollow. My friends talked about video games and crushes, I could only think of Tyler's final message. I packed that walkie-talkie into a shoebox with his old comic books and avoided visiting the creek. Every night, I'd lie awake, half expecting to hear his voice over static. Over the next few years, I drifted. I graduated high school, went off to college, and found a job in the city. I tried to bury my memories. But every now and then, I'd see a kid with a walkie-talkie and my chest would tighten. I couldn't sell that old device, I kept it hidden in my closet, wondering if I'd ever hear his voice again. It was early June 2023 when, on a whim, I drove back to my parents' now abandoned house on Maple Avenue. The place looked battered, windows boarded, porch sagging. Inside, dust motes swirled in the sunlight. Upstairs in the attic, I found that shoebox with the walkie-talkie. My heart pounded as I rummaged it out, braced to toss it, but instead I slid fresh batteries in. I flipped the switch, nothing. Then a faint crackle, "Jamie." My skin went cold. It could have been my imagination 2 decades older, desperate to believe, but I knew that voice. My hands shook as I dropped the device. Nightmares slammed me awake for weeks afterward. Every shadow, every whisper felt like Tyler calling. I tried ignoring it, but eventually I had to know. I packed a camera, extra batteries for the walkie-talkies, and drove out to Cranberry Creek, the same place where he died. The forest welcomed me with damp earth and tangled branches. As I neared the creek, I remembered those childhood forts, now nothing but rotting wood. I bent down to examine a mossy stump where we'd carved our initials, J and T, now faded. My heart ached. I clicked on the walkie-talkie. Crackle. Not safe. The voice seemed to come from all around me. Fear lanced through me. Then, Through the underbrush, I spotted another walkie-talkie, half buried in mud. I scooped it up his transmitter, I knew, wiping away grime. I flicked the switch. Another crackle, they're listening, follow. I spun around, flashlight beam slicing the darkness, but no one stood there. I sensed movement, a flicker in my peripheral vision, then nothing. Rain began to spatter down. My flashlight caught a pale scrap of fabric snagged on a branch. I remembered picking up a similar scrap after Tyler's death. I pressed both devices close to my chest, breath caught. Then I heard it, branches snapping ahead. I pointed the light and saw a figure between trees, tall, hunched. My heart leapt. Its eyes glowed briefly, and it smiled, revealing too many teeth. I stumbled back, clicking on the second walkie-talkie, Tyler. The creature's head snapped toward me, and I dropped to the ground, pressing my back against a tree. It hissed a sound neither man nor beast and lunged. I scrambled on hands and knees, racing back toward the trail. The mud was slick, I nearly slid into a ditch. Branches tore at my clothes as I ran, rain hammering my face. I burst through the tree line, fleeing until I crashed into my car, slamming the door behind me. I sat there in the dark, breathing hard, rain drumming on the roof. The walkie-talkies lay on the seat, crackling with static. I slid the key into the ignition, hands trembling, and drove home without turning on the radio. When I got home, I forced myself to sleep, though my dreams were filled with shadows. The next morning, I dug up whatever I could on Tyler's death, old newspaper archives, scrapings of police reports, virtual microfilms. In Pittsburgh's aging library, I found a memo from 2003 stating witness saw two men near the creek, evidence inconclusive, case closed. That was new. More digging led to a sealed envelope with witness statements. Someone heard a truck roar in the woods at midnight, saw figures dragging something into it, tire tracks not matching police vehicles, and notes that Tyler had bruises inconsistent with a simple fall. I realized it wasn't an accident, somebody forced him. But who? Rumors pointed to the Hargraves, a wealthy trucking family in Somerset County. They were rumored to move stolen electronics up north. Maybe Tyler stumbled on them with his walkie-talkie, picking up radio chatter. The thought of my best friend cornered by grown men in suits and dumped in the creek made my blood run cold. That night, I found Conrad Mason, a local legend. He'd once been a teenager living off the land near Cranberry Creek, convinced Hargraves' men killed Tyler. He'd been in and out of psychiatric wards, fueled by grief and paranoia. I tracked him down to a small rehabilitation facility. When I told him I'd found evidence linking the Hargraves to stolen electronics, he trembled and whispered, "They can't hurt him anymore." His eyes glowed with relief and heartbreak. Armed with witness statements and my own forest footage of black vans unloading crates labeled Electrotech, I confronted the Somerset Sheriff's Department. Deputies listened, eyes widening. Detective Hughes, the same one who'd brushed me off 20 years ago, agreed to reopen the case. Under public pressure, they raided Hargrave Industries, a nondescript warehouse on the edge of town. Inside, they found crates of stolen electronics and documents linking Alvy Hargrave and his son Ethan to a black market ring. They also uncovered off-the-books financial records showing hush money paid to local officials who pulled the plug on the original investigation. That night, at a press conference, Detective Hughes announced, Tyler Jensen was murdered. The Hargraves are charged with accessory to murder and evidence tampering. Conrad sat beside me, tears streaking his gaunt face. "You kept your promise," he whispered. Weeks later, after the Hargraves were found guilty, I returned to Cranberry Creek. It was a warm July evening, fireflies lit the dusk. I carried both walkie-talkies to the creek's edge. Turning them on, I braced myself. For a long moment, only the water's gentle murmur responded. Then, crackled Jamie. My heart leapt. "Thank you." It was soft, distant, but unmistakable. The wind rippled through the trees, carrying that final whisper. I understood then that Tyler was at peace. I placed both devices on a flat rock, letting them lie there as symbols of our friendship and the truth we'd uncovered together. I stood up, took one last look at the spot where his body was found, and whispered, "Goodbye, my friend." Whatever haunted those woods was finally at rest. The creek's water flashed in the fading light, as though nodding in approval, and I walked away under a sky that, for the first time in 20 years, felt a little less ominous and a lot more free. I met Emma during our freshman orientation at Monroe University. She had that infectious laugh and wore a beat-up denim jacket like a badge of honor. I was nervous, fumbling with my name tag, when she nudged me and said, "Hey, I'm Emma and you look like you need a friend." Just like that, our friendship began. Over the years, we survived cramped dorms, endless coffee runs, and countless weekend movie marathons. After graduation, she became a graphic designer downtown, and I started teaching. Despite our busy lives, we always kept Friday night dinner as sacred, our way of staying grounded. Then, one Tuesday afternoon in mid-September, I got a frantic text from her. "Do you know anyone with the number 857-493-2110? Someone texted me, saying they were lost and needed directions." I didn't give out my number. I shrugged it off at first, maybe a prank. But that evening, she called me in a panic, voice shaking. They texted again, "Where am I? It's dark, and I'm alone. How do they know where I live?" I drove over, thinking she was overreacting. But when she showed me the texts, "You looked nice tonight, why didn't you say hi when I left work?" I saw the fear in her eyes. She insisted she hadn't seen anyone. We blocked the number, deleted the messages, and hoped it would stop. A week later, I got another call. "There's a man outside my office just standing there." I rushed to her building and saw a dark hooded figure across the street, perfectly still. She said he'd been there for 3 nights straight. We called the police. They arrived an hour later, surrounding the man, who bolted into an alley. When they caught Danny, he claimed he'd found Emma's number scribbled on a wall. The cops arrested him and said he was the stalker. At the preliminary hearing, Danny admitted to sending the texts from a burner phone and stalking her. Emma was relieved until she whispered, "That's not him. He doesn't know my schedule like someone else does. He doesn't know I jog on Tuesdays at 6 a.m. Her conviction shook me. Maybe the real stalker was still out there, more organized, watching her every move. 2 weeks later, Emma returned home to find a torn piece of notebook paper shoved under her door. "I'm still here." She said she had just stepped out to shower. He knew exactly when she was away. We spent that night sleeping on the couch in shifts, but I never really fell asleep. I was too keyed up. I peeked at the hallway camera. Its angle had been changed, as if someone had silently rotated it. My gut told me things were far from over. A few days later, Emma invited me to a new cafe on 8th Street. On my way, I got a text on her phone, "I see you at the window. Don't move." My heart dropped. I peeled in front of the cafe and spotted a dark sedan idling in the alley. Emma staggered out pale-faced. She had flashbacks to the night watchman. We bolted back home, locking down every door. She realized the license plate was stolen. Her stalker was lurking so close he could tail her. We decided to flee the city. I booked a flight to a cabin in Vermont, somewhere remote. That first night, I tried to sleep but jolted awake at 3:17 a.m. just like Emma had predicted. I heard a knock at the door and saw a shadow slip across the hallway. I froze, then reached FBI agent Rodriguez, who told me to stay calm, help was on the way. But when the knock came again, "Emma, open up." My blood ran cold. The voice was polite, too calm, like someone who believed they had every right inside. I bolted to Emma's room. She was shaking, tucked under blankets. The door rattled again. I pressed against it, heart racing. Finally, sirens wailed as state troopers burst in. Agents had tracked some signal and arrived just in time. The intruder vanished into the night. Through the 317 scare, the FBI assigned us 24/7 protection. We moved into a tiny cabin near Brattleboro, changed our names online, cut our digital footprints, and tried to live on the fringe, hiking, reading, making dinners by the fireplace. But every late-night creak made our hearts pound. Emma designed freelance logos as Bluebird Designs, terrified to send files over the internet. I tutored students online, but I couldn't relax, always scanning the tree line for headlights. By winter, things quieted down until I stumbled on an online forum where someone else described eerily similar creepy texts. I messaged the poster and got screenshots of IP logs tracing back to Queens, NYC. Someone had hacked her Gmail, stolen her calendar. I sent everything to Simone, a lawyer friend in Brooklyn, who helped us subpoena ISP records. That meant FBI involvement. We convinced Emma to stop running. We needed the FBI to track this thing to the end. Agent Rodriguez reassured us, "We'll catch whoever's behind this." So we handed over the logs. Weeks later, Garrett Mills, an exit guy living off the grid, was arrested for hacking and stalking. He'd admitted to sending the texts, watching Emma's schedule, and physically lurking near her job. Relief washed over us until we realized Garrett was just a foot soldier. The FBI tracked Garrett's payments to an offshore shell company called Aurelius Partners, leading to Cyclops Network, a dark web ring run by Victor Marcone, a disgraced hacker who'd built a criminal empire preying on creative professionals. Once Marcone's operation went public, more victims came forward: coders, writers, designers, all extorted the same way. The media ran headlines, tech blogs exploded. We helped organize a small nonprofit, Eyes Open, to educate freelancers on digital safety. Garrett's trial ended in a 15-year sentence. But Emma still felt pursued, haunted by nightmares of 3:17 a.m. Then, in the spring, Marcone was arrested in New Jersey. His trial in Brooklyn exposed the network's reach, how he'd weaponized personal calendars to wreck lives. Emma and I testified. When the jury found him guilty, I saw the mix of relief and lingering fear on her face. Marcone was sentenced to life without parole. Afterward, we moved to a quiet Vermont town, installed biometric locks, and built a panic closet. Emma changed her professional alias to Silver Pine Studio, but clients were hesitant. "We can't hire a known stalking victim." I threw myself into teaching digital safety workshops for schools, and Emma began speaking at community tech events. Despite our efforts, every odd sound at night rattled us. One October evening, nearly a year after Marcone's arrest, Emma called me frantic. Two men posing as electricians were at our door, IDs in hand. I raced home to find them in coveralls, toolboxes ready. I confronted them. One pulled a small stun gun and zapped me across the ribcage. Emma tried to help but was pinned. Before they could drag her away, sirens blared. FBI agents had been watching. The imposters fled into the woods. One was caught, claiming to work for Adrian Cross, Marcone's lieutenant. It was clear, Cyclops Network wasn't fully dismantled. We'd only scratched the surface. 2 days later, Agent Rodriguez led a raid on a Philadelphia warehouse, Cross's makeshift command center. We snuck in at dawn, cut power to his servers, and watched as Cross tried to escape. He was arrested in a frantic chase down a dark hallway. The IT specialist grabbed Cross's hard drives, which contained evidence tying him to dozens more cyberstalking cases. With Cross's confession, dozens of accomplices worldwide were arrested. It felt like defeating a monster at last. With Cross and Marcone behind bars, the FBI quieted down. Emma and I moved into a small condo with a functional security system, cameras, alarms, panic buttons. Her nightmares eased. She no longer woke at 3:17 a.m. We took a week-long trip to a remote Adirondack cabin, no phones, no internet, just fishing and campfires. For once, we slept through the night. She tentatively dated again a kind guy from her art class who never asked for details about her past. She designed a logo for his woodworking business, smiling for the first time in ages. I dove back into teaching, weaving digital safety modules into my lessons. My students took it seriously, some set up two-factor authentication on their own accounts, and that gave me hope. But we never forgot. Every so often, I'd catch a flicker in Emma's eye, her momentary flinch at a notification ping. We still keep our phones locked down tight, avoid oversharing, and check locks 3 times before bed. We've learned that safety is a process, not a destination. When things are quiet, I sometimes hear a faint whisper in the breeze, I'm still here. It's like a ghost from our past, reminding us that once someone knows your schedule, your habits, they can reach you anywhere. But now, that whisper reminds me of how far we've come, how we faced our worst fears, and how we turned our trauma into purpose. Emma and I rebuild daily, sometimes with trembling hands, but with steady hearts. We still guard ourselves fiercely, but we let the light in when we can, a slow drive to the farmer's market, a quiet weekend hike, a coffee on the porch. We have scars, yes, but also strength we never knew we had. So if you ever feel a chill when your phone buzzes from an unknown number, or wonder if someone might be watching, remember, you're not alone. Speak up. Get help. Don't let the shadows win. And maybe, just maybe, you'll find, like Emma and I did, that in the darkest nights, friendship and courage can become your brightest light.